Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was the bodyguard of Azula. Naruto is banished from Konoha, but gives them the slip and boards a ship. Soon after, he is shipwrecked on Ember Island and is saved by Azula. 3 years later, Naruto is Azula's bodyguard while she hunts for the Avatar, but did he see the last of Konoha? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 20, Hiding in Home. Location, unknown. Aang opened his eyes with a small groan. He got up from the bed he was on and sat on its edge. The process made him groggy. He shook his head to clear away the grogginess and placed his hand on his bandaged chest. He also vaguely noticed that his chest wasn't the only thing that was bandaged. What happened? He asked. Noticing something out of the corner of his eye, he saw that the banners in the room were of a deep red color. Turning his gaze back to the bed, he saw the flag of the Fire Nation looming over him. Oh no! Realizing that he had to escape, he grabbed his gilder staff, opened the door, and made his way into the corridor. It was difficult for him to walk down the corridor. He had to use his gilder staff as a third leg and the wall for support. He came to a corner when he heard someone say, "You hear something?" He looked around the corner and saw two people dressed in Fire Nation armor. Using his gilder, he bent a blast of air at the two of them and started running, or in this case, hobbling. "He's awake!" the soldier cried. They went after him, which only made him increase his hobbling. "Stop! Wait!" the soldier called after him. Aang didn't pay any attention. He tried to climb a staircase out to the deck, but tripped on the last step. He fell to the ground. His gilder slid across the deck to where two Fire Nation soldiers were feeding a familiar lemur. "Momo?" he asked, confused. The lemur gave a screech of delight, ran over to him, jumped on his shoulder, and licked his face. "Twinkle toes!" cried Toph, who had been standing at the rail with Katara. "That's got to be you." "Aang, you're awake," Katara said as everyone crowded around him. They were either wearing Fire Nation armor or red cloaks that said they were from the Fire Nation. "Are you sure?" "I feel like I'm dreaming," he replied, rubbing his eyes. Everything he saw just didn't look right to him. Maybe he was still groggy. "You're not dreaming. You're finally awake," she said, giving him a hug, which made Momo fly away. "Aang, good to see you back with them living, buddy," said a familiar voice inside a Fire Nation uniform, who gave him a quick hug. Standing next to him was a white wolf. "Sokka? Akela?" asked Aang. As he kept looking at everyone, he began to feel woozy. "Oh, somebody catch him, he's going to," Toph began to say as Katara tried to grab him. She just missed as he fainted and collapsed to the ground. Katara held him as they all looked at him, Appa joining in the looking as well. Location, FNS Burning Sun. Zuko stood on the deck, looking at the moon in its full glory. Mai approached him from behind. "Aren't you cold?" she asked, standing by his side. "I got a lot on my mind," he told her. "It's been so long, over 3 years since I was home. I wonder what's changed. I wonder how I've changed," he said to himself. She yawned. "I just asked if you were cold. I didn't ask for your whole life story." When he looked away, she gave a small laugh, walked up behind him, and turned his head to face her. "Stop worrying." The two of them shared a brief kiss before she walked away, leaving him to look at the moon again and contemplating what has changed. Unbeknownst to him, Naruto sat on top of the tower, watching the moon as well. Hearing someone landing on the tiles next to him, he looked over. "Do you always come up here when you want to be alone?" Gaara asked. "You got something on your mind?" The blonde asked back, looking up at his friend. He sat down beside him. "Why do you hate the Konoha shinobi?" Naruto went silent. That was a question that he didn't even want to talk about, let alone answer. I don't hate them. I want them to leave me alone. They still care for you, you know that. Cammy, take it, not you too. He groaned, pinching the bridge of his nose. He was already touchy about the subject in question, and Gaara bringing it up was the last thing he wanted. Why do you insist on pushing them away? The Kazekage asked. He was intent on finding the actual answer to why the blonde had left their side of the world. He took his fingers away from his nose and looked his friend straight in the eye. Gaara, look at me. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. They just can't seem to grasp that. This is my life now, and I want them to leave me alone. They didn't comply, so I made them. Things fell quiet between them as they sat on the roof. Naruto, you've never asked me about how I was resurrected. Does it matter? He asked. You're alive. I was rescued by Chiyo, an elder of my village, and a team from Konoha. Konoha. His face became neutral. I see. Are you not going to ask which team was sent? Quite frankly, Gaara, I don't care. You're alive and a bunch of shinobi from Konoha helped. That's all there is to it. It was Team Kakashi, the redhead told him. He groaned, putting his face in his hands. You just had to say it. When they saw me dead, Sakura and Sasuke fell to their knees and cried. They were mourning the fact that they had lost another of their friends, like they had lost you. I told you, I don't want to hear this, he said, voice muffled due to his face being in his hands. You should be proud of them. They're quite well known in the world of shinobi. They're known as the Konoha no Sakura Ho-Oh and Kurojishi no Sharingan. Enough, Gaara, he declared, pulling his head back up. I don't want to hear about them. I'm not interested about what they did or what they're known as. Change the subject. He sighed. Very well, why were you up here anyway? I had an idea, so I'm mulling it over. What's the idea? I was thinking of writing a book. Something along the lines of what I did in Ba Sing Se. It had been a vague idea in the back of his head just as they left Ba Sing Se. But as he thought it over, he began to like it more and more. Although I would have loved to read a book about deadly court intrigues, if that book existed. You mean like a spy novel? Yeah, but I'm having trouble coming up with a name for the main character. Right now, all I have for a last name is Ryu. I can't think of a first name. Gaara looked up at the moon, noticing how white it looked at that moment. Does Shiro sound good to you? He asked. Naruto thought it over. Yeah, I like it. It works. Thanks, Gaara. He cleared his voice. The name's Ryu. Shiro Ryu, he intoned, looking completely serious, before breaking out into a huge grin. Oh yeah, that works. I also know about how he acts now. I gotta go write this stuff down before I forget. He leapt off the tower, landed on the deck and ran below deck. Gaara just watched him run off. He stayed there for a few minutes before also jumped off the tower, using his sand to cushion his landing. He then quietly walked back down below deck. Location, Team Avatar ship. Why are we on a Fire Nation ship? Aang asked as one of the crew put a robe over his shoulders. Why is everyone dressed this way? And why am I the only one who's completely out of it? You need to take it easy, okay? You got hurt pretty bad, Katara told him. I like your hair, she said, trying to be a little less awkward. I have hair? He asked, freaking out as he felt the top of his head. Sure enough, there was hair growing there. How long was I out? A few weeks. It had been a scary few weeks. Everything okay? Asked Hakoda as he walked over. We're fine, Dad, Katara told him curtly. I'm Hakoda, Katara and Sokka's father, he introduced himself to the Avatar. He knows who you are. I just called you Dad, she snapped at him. I guess you're right. Nice to officially meet you, Chief Hakoda, Aang greeted him, holding out his hand. It never hurt to be friendly. It's an honor to meet you, he replied, clasping his arm. Great, now you guys have finally met. So would you mind giving a little privacy? Katara asked her dad rudely. Of course, he said before walking away. Are you mad at your dad or something? Aang asked her as she scowled at her father's back. What, not at all. Why would you say that? She asked, confused. He shrugged, but the motion made him clutch his side in pain. Maybe we should go upstairs. You need a healing session. She took him back inside, into the bedroom. After having him sit down, she bent water out of 2 nearby jars and placed her hands on his back, over the red scar he now had. Tell me where the pain feels most intense, she told him, her hands covered with glowing water and touching his back. Aang gave a small grunt of pain. A little higher, he told her. As she moved higher, he got a flashback of him rising out of the crystal cocoon in the avatar state. Wow, you're definitely in the right area there. I can feel a lot of energy twisted up around there. Let me see if I can. She bent the water away from his back, but when she did, he arched his back in pain. He remembered going into the avatar state a second time, before getting hit in the back by a bolt of lightning. I went down, he said as he came out of the memory. I didn't just get hurt, did I? It was worse than that. I was gone, but you brought me back. I just used the spirit water from the North Pole. I don't know what I did exactly, she told him truthfully, looking down at the floor. That night, she had been half afraid that she had killed him instead of healed him. He turned around to face her. You saved me. You need to rest, she told him, placing a hand on his face. He couldn't help but agree with her. Location, Fire Nation. The old twins, Li and Lo, stood on a balcony addressing a crowd below while Azula and Zuko waited in the tower behind them. Although both siblings had preferred to keep their return to the Fire Nation a low-key event, the Fire Lord insisted that his people be allowed to see their prince and princess return from a campaign in the Earth Kingdom. Naruto walked behind the royal children, in his formal Fire Nation military uniform, but he kept his Paragon medallion hidden. Your Princess Azula, clever and beautiful, disguised herself as the enemy and entered the Earth Kingdom's capital, Li said. In Ba Sing Se, she found her brother Zuko, Lo said. And together they faced the Avatar. And the Avatar fell. The twins spoke as one. And the Earth Kingdom fell. Azula's agents quickly overtook the entire city, Li announced. They went to Ba Sing Se's great walls. And brought them down. The twins spoke as one again. In the building behind them, Azula and Zuko shared a small smile. Naruto groaned inwardly when he heard the twins' announcement, referencing the Dai Li's controlled collapse of the outer wall, even though Ba Sing Se had a large and perfectly functional gates. The armies of the Fire Nation surged through the city through the walls and swarmed over Ba Sing Se, securing our victory. Now the heroes have returned home. The twins spoke in unison. Your princess, Azula. Lo announced. Azula knew that was her cue and walked onto the balcony. The crowd cheered as they saw the princess of the Fire Nation. They always cheered for her. But now, they put a little more into it. And after 3 long years, your prince has returned. Li said. It was he who led the dragon's fangs in the siege of Akawan, defending it from the Earth Kingdom. He challenged the Earth Kingdom general to single combat and won and earned the title of the Scarred Dragon for setting free the dragon that was held captive. Lo cried. Zuko! Shouted the twins. Zuko walked onto the balcony, garbed in formal armor, and with his hair done up into a top knot. The people cheered louder for him than they did for Azula. Some of them began to chant Akawan. Akawan! Akawan! He knew that they were chanting his victory, cheering him for being there at the right time. But somehow, the chanting felt hollow. All he could feel was the faint warmth of the giant fire behind him, as well as its shadow covering him. Yet, the twins were not done with the royal children, for they decided to continue with their procession, this time targeting the blonde in question. When Kozan faced certain death and our soldiers were outnumbered, the paragon of the Fire Nation rose to the occasion and planned a surprise for the enemy. Lo continued. Lee added her bit as well. Together with Princess Azula and her allies, Lord Naruto faced the Earth Kingdom's armies and slayed its general in the field of battle. The Fire Nation's newest hero, Lord Naruto. The twins finished, much to the wild approval of the crowd. Naruto waved at the crowds as they cheered loudly. Yet, he could not help but see the irony of this situation, while at the same time faintly winced, as he spotted the guard struggling frantically to hold off a gaggle of women trying to approach him. I would have loved this kind of adulation, if I was still a naive, 12-year-old boy back in Konoha, Naruto thought. Now I'm being given recognition for the wrong reasons. Location, Team Avatar ship. Everyone had gathered for breakfast. Since everyone was there, Sokka decided to tell Aang what was going on. After what happened in Ba Sing Se, we had to get you to safety, he explained as he sat on a crate. Akela lay next to him on the deck. We flew back to Chameleon Bay, where we found my father and the other Water Tribe men. The Earth King decided he wanted to travel the world in disguise, so he set off alone. Well, not completely alone. Bosco? Asked Aang. Yep. Soon the bay was overrun by Fire Nation ships. Rather than fight them all, we captured a single ship and made it our disguise. Since then, we've been traveling west. He pointed to the map he now held. We crossed through the Serpent's Pass a few days ago. We've seen a few Fire Nation ships, but none have bothered us. But what exactly happened in Ba Sing Se? I thought the Dai Li obeyed you. He still wasn't sure of what exactly happened during the takeover. All he really knew was that Shuyi wasn't who she said she was, and nobody realized it until she revealed it herself and betrayed them. Sokka's expression fell, changing into a small scowl. I didn't think that Naruto left that book on purpose. I had gotten cocky. I never thought that he could use the law about the Dai Li as well. I should have figured that he would have had control over the Dai Li as well. Everyone was silent for a minute. So, what now? Aang finally asked. We've been working on a modified version of the invasion plan, Hakoda told him. It's Sokka's invasion plan, Katara said pointedly to her father. Yes, Sokka's plan, he agreed. We won't be able to mount a massive invasion without the Earth Kingdom's armies, but the solar eclipse will still leave the Fire Nation vulnerable. So, we're planning a smaller invasion, Sokka continued. It's just a ragtag team of our friends and allies from around the Earth Kingdom. We already ran into Pipsqueak and the Duke. Good to see you again, Aang, Pipsqueak said, while the Duke ate from atop his head. And the best part is, the eclipse isn't even our biggest advantage. We have you. He declared, looking straight at the airbender. Me? Aang asked, confused. Yep, because the whole world thinks you're dead. To say the Avatar was stunned might have been an understatement. Location, Fire Nation. Zuko walked down the corridor before finally stopping at a door. He reached for the door and opened it, walking into his own room. It had been 3 years since he had been in his own room, and yet it looked like it hadn't changed at all. Everything was exactly the way he left it. I wondered when Father ordered it to be cleaned, Zuko thought to himself with a little cynicism. Then he noticed something on a nearby table. Walking over to it, he noticed it was a sheath for Dao swords, with said swords lying next to it. He just stared at them. I'd thought he would have them thrown away. In his exile, he used the standard issue of Dao swords, and he had also stolen a pair when he and Iroh were on the run. But the ones in front of him, they were his. He had forged them after his training with Piandao. It was funny, looking at them for the first time in 3 years made his left palm twinge. He could still remember when he had begun the process of forging the swords. He had cut his palm on a block of metal, almost covering it in his blood. Despite of that, the block of metal seemed to be the right one for him, and he gave to Piandao. The one thing that had always struck Zuko as odd was that he had smelted the block of metal while it still had his blood on it. He reached for the swords, picking them up and feeling their weight again. As he held them, he felt like he was finding a lost part of himself. He thought he had heard a faint voice say, "Where the hell have you been?" in the back of his head, sounding very annoyed. As he went through a few basic motions to get the feel for them again, he saw the familiar inscription on the two blades. Flashback. "Saifu, what do these inscriptions mean?" Zuko asked as he showed the inscriptions on his swords to Piandao. "It is something that my Saifu had taught me. While the language is ancient, he told me what they say." "What's that?" "The inscriptions say this: abandon your fear. Don't give an inch. Advance and never stop. If you retreat you will age. Be afraid and you'll die." End flashback. Prince Zuko?" said a voice behind him. He swung around and pointed a Dao sword at a middle-aged man in servant's garb. The man gave a cry of surprise and flinched away. "Who are you?" Zuko demanded, holding the sword point just between the eyes. My name's Ha." The servant yelped. "I was ordered to be your personal servant." He withdrew the sword from Ha's neck. "Next time, don't sneak up on me. I might have killed you," he warned him. "My apologies, sir, I will remember that," he said, bowing low in apology. "Good. Leave me be for now." Ha bowed again. "Yes, Prince Zuko." He left the room, leaving Zuko alone in the room. Location: Team Avatar ship. "The world thinks I'm dead." Aang asked as he stood at the rail. "How is that good news?" "That's terrible. The natural balance would be disturbed if people thought he was dead. He had to make it right. It means the Fire Nation won't be hunting us anymore. And even better, they won't be expecting you on the day of Black Sun," Sokka tried to explain. No. You have no idea. This is so messed up." They heard the horn of another ship. Turning their gaze to the sound, they saw that it was another Fire Nation ship. "I'll handle this," Aang declared, grabbing his glider staff. "The Avatar is back." He opened the gilder, but it hurt him. He tried to ready himself for takeoff when he felt something holding the gilder down. Looking down, he saw that Akela held the staff in his teeth. "Aang, wait," Katara said. "Remember, they don't know we're not Fire Nation." Despite wanting to show that he wasn't dead, he could see her logic. Sweating, he gently tugged the gilder away from Akela and folded it. "Everyone, just stay calm," Hakoda told them all. "Bato and I will take care of this." The two Water Tribe men finished their disguise by putting on their helmets. Meanwhile, Pipsqueak and the Duke used a large bundle of cloth to hide Appa, Momo, and Akela. "I hate not being able to do anything," Aang whispered as he and the others hid in the staircase. "Hopefully, you won't need to," Toph replied. The two ships got closer to each other. As they sat side by side, a ramp was lowered so the Fire Nation captain could walk across. "Commander, why are you off course?" he asked as Hakoda saluted. "All Western Fleet ships are supposed to be moving towards Ba Sing Se to support the occupation. Actually, we're from the Eastern Fleet," Hakoda lied as he and Bato shared a look with each other. "We have orders to deliver some cargo." It was a simple lie, one they just had to stick to. If they did that, getting out of this should be easy. "Ah, Eastern Fleet," the captain mused to himself. "Well, nice of Admiral Chan to let us know he was sending one of his ships our way." "I'm sure Admiral Chan meant no disrespect, sir," Bato tried to assure him. "I mean, how hard is it to write a quick note and send a hawk our way?" he asked, ignoring what the fake Fire Nation officer had just said. "Next time, we'll send 2 hawks to make sure you get the message," Hakoda told him. They saluted and the disguised Fire Nation soldiers turned around and walked away. "Sir, Admiral Chan has been on leave for 2 months at Ember Island," one of the soldiers that accompanied the captain whispered to him. "What? Why doesn't anyone tell me anything? Something's not right, they should have known that. I think this is a captured ship." They started to walk back across the ramp. "Just stay quiet until we're safely across the ramp. Then we'll sink this ship," the captain whispered to the soldiers. Unfortunately for him, Toph heard the entire thing. "They know." She yelled out for everyone to hear. Slamming her hand onto the deck, she bent the metal ramp to fall into the water, taking the captain and the 2 soldiers with it. Katara then bent the ocean to rise and push the other ship away from them. They took that advantage and started to sail away. Meanwhile, a ladder was thrown down for the men in the water, so they could get back on board their own ship. Location, Fire Nation. Zuko sat in the garden, throwing bread pieces at the turtle ducks. Hearing movement to his side, he looked and saw Azula sitting down next to him. A brief look behind him confirmed that Naruto was up in the tree. "Funny, last time I checked, the turtle ducks were afraid of you," he commented as he kept throwing pieces into the pond. "Naruto covered me in breadcrumbs and then threw me into the water when he saw how I treated them," she replied, a small smile on her face. "The little ones are quite the nibblers." She placed a hand in the pond. The baby turtle ducks came and started rubbing their heads against it. "By the way, congratulations," she said as she felt her hand being rubbed. "For what?" he asked, confused. "For earning the title of dragon," she explained. "I realized that I had never actually congratulated you. I never expected you to congratulate me. I kinda expected you to insult me about it," he told her with complete honesty. He had fully expected her to be completely jealous and make fun of what he did. "I can't be proud of my older brother?" she asked, sounding a little offended. Before he could answer, they heard a sword hitting the ground. Turning around, they saw Naruto's Jin sticking out of the ground. "Sorry, just making sure gravity was still working," he told them as he jumped down from the tree and pulled the Jin out from the ground. "Was that really necessary?" Azula asked him, pulling her hand from the water. If the sound the baby turtle ducks were making was anything to go by, they were disappointed in the loss. "I had to check. I didn't have a coin handy." "What exactly are the 3 of you doing?" Yao Jing asked as she approached them. Her voice made the turtle ducks swim away. "And why do you look so down, little brother?" she asked Zuko. I haven't seen Dad yet. I haven't seen him in 3 years since I was banished," he told her. "So?" she asked, making it sound like it wasn't a big thing. "So, I didn't capture the Avatar," he reminded her. That had been her fault. If she hadn't interfered in Old Boss Sing Se, the Avatar would have been in chains by now. "Who cares? The Avatar is dead." She caught the look he had on his face as he looked away. "Unless you think he somehow miraculously survived." Katara's words went through his head again. "This is water from the Spirit Oasis at the North Pole. It has special properties, so I've been saving it for something important." He turned his attention back to his half-sister. "No, there's no way he could have survived." They glared at each other, almost daring the other to make a move. "Well, then I'm sure the 2 of you have nothing to worry about," she said before walking away. "She's done something," Naruto said after she had left the garden. "The 2 of you keep your guard up." Both Azula and Zuko nodded in agreement. They had caught what Yao Jing had said. If they weren't careful, it would not be good for them. Location, Team Avatar ship. The enemy ship was chasing them and firing flaming rocks at them. "Load the Toph." Toph commanded as she took an earthbending stance. Pipsqueak placed a large slab of rock in front of her. Using her earthbending, she lifted the rock and threw at the enemy ship, crushing one of their catapults. She fired off another one to intercept another incoming missile. Sokka, Akela, and Aang stayed inside. When Aang tried to go out and help, Sokka stopped him. Aang just banged his head on his gilder staff. I am completely useless. He mentally yelled at himself. The enemy ship aimed a harpoon down into the water and fired. It flew into the water and breached the hull, letting water to flow in. After being pulled out, it left a bigger hole and more water flowed in. Katara, however, was already on top of it. She quickly froze the water around the hole, sealing it off. I'm gonna give us some cover, she told the others. She bent the ocean to turn into vapor, giving them a fog screen. But it didn't really work, as the next missile destroyed the supply of rock slabs they had. I can't just stand by and do nothing, Aang declared. He tried to run and join the fight, but Akela had grabbed the hem of his robe and held him in place. You're still hurt, Aang, Sokka told him as he brought him back inside. And you have to stay secret. Just let us handle this. Fine, he said curtly. Akela, make sure he stays inside, Sokka ordered the wolf before running out onto the deck as another missile almost slammed into the deck. The two ships sailed out of the fog, giving the enemy clear vision again. They fired another missile, which slammed into the deck and caused a fire. Katara quickly doused the fire with water from the ocean. How are we doing? Toph asked Sokka. Things couldn't get much worse, Sokka told her. It was at that point, the serpent from the Serpent's Pass burst out of the water with a roar. The universe just loves proving me wrong, doesn't it? He asked to no one in particular. You make it too easy. The serpent was about to attack them when it was hit by a missile. Turning its attention to the other ship, it dove into the water and wrapped itself around it, letting them get away. Thank you, the universe. Sokka cheered as he watched on. You're very welcome, Saifu's voice whispered in his ear, momentarily surprising him. Be glad I know how to nudge these creatures in the right direction. You sent him after that ship? He asked underneath his breath, so no one would hear him. Nope, the ship did that by itself. I just had the serpent come here. Hours later, they docked the ship at a town. Aang was in his room again, trying to rest. The door opened, letting Sokka, Toph, Katara, and Akela walk in. Hey, Aang, said Toph. We're going into town to find some dinner. They were hoping to make it like it was before, just them and no one else. Well, I am pretty hungry, Aang said, his stomach agreeing with the statement. Maybe dinner's a good idea. Sokka took out a headband from a pouch on his belt. Here, tie this around your head. It'll cover your arrow, he told the air nomad, offering the headband to him. He looked insulted at the mere prospect of wearing the thing. I'm not going out if I can't wear my arrow proudly. He snapped before turning away from them. Aang, come on. Be practical, the tribesman told him. He turned his head to glare at him. Oh yeah, sure, be practical. Like how you were practical about the daily. I guess you're not as smart as you think you are. Everyone was silent for what seemed to be a long time. They had never known Aang to insult someone, and yet he just did. If you're going to act like this every time you're beaten, I can see why the Paragons keep watch over the Avatar, Sokka told him in a controlled voice before turning around and walking out the door, Akela behind him. Katara motioned Toph to follow him, leaving her and Aang alone in the room. I think I understand why being a secret bothers you so much, she said, placing a hand on his shoulder, trying to comfort him. You don't want people to think you failed. You're right, I don't, he replied. But the problem is, I did fail. And he failed in a spectacular way. He had led the Fire Nation right into Ba Sing Se and let them take it over. Aang, that's not true, she protested. He sat up. It is true, he told her as he got up from the bed. I was in Ba Sing Se. I was there. But I lost. And now the Earth Kingdom has fallen for good. The Fire Nation had all but won because of his actions. It's not for good. She stood up as well. Remember, there's still a plan, the invasion. And I hate the invasion plan too. He half shouted at her. He grabbed hold of the flag that stood above the bed, tore it off and threw it to the ground. I don't want you or anyone else risking your lives to fix my mistakes. I've always known that I would have to face the Fire Lord. But now I know I need to do it alone. Aang. She walked around the bed, her arms already out for a hug. She desperately wanted to hold him and make it all okay, like nothing was wrong. Katara, please, he said, making her stop. Just go, please. She turned around and walked back to the door. Is there anything you need? She asked, stopping at the door. I need to redeem myself. I need my honor back, he declared. She stayed at the door for a second. You know, if Asuma and the others were still here, one of them would have probably whacked over the head for what you've said, she said before finally leaving. Sokka have also whacked you in the head for the same reason. You're starting to sound like Zuko. Well, they aren't here, are they? He muttered to himself, looking down at his staff. He also felt offended by her comparison of his outburst to Zuko. It's just more people who would have risked their lives for me. It's better that they're gone. Location, Fire Nation. Zuko walked through the palace, coming to a stop at a curtained entrance. The last time he stood before this entrance, it was before that fateful meeting. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he pushed past the curtain and walked into the throne room. He saw his father, sitting on the throne, his face obscured by the shadow cast by the fire. He walked forward, and when he was close enough, he got to his knees and bowed low. You have been away for a long time, Ozai said, looking down at his son. I see the weight of your travels has changed you. You have redeemed yourself, my son. He stood up and walked down the steps. Zuko raised his head and saw the face of his father, a face he hadn't seen for 3 years. Welcome home. Location, Team Avatar ship. Katara walked back to Aang's room, carrying a tray of food. I brought you some food, she said as she came through the door. But the room was empty. Oh no, she whispered, dropping the tray and running down the hallway. Sure enough, Aang was flying over the ocean, intent on waging a one-man war against the Fire Nation. However, he was still injured. As he held his side in pain, he fell towards the water. He managed to recover before hitting the water itself and flew on. He was determined to do this. Katara ran out onto the command tower deck, where Hakoda and Bato were. I'll leave you two alone, Bato said after he noticed the tears in her eyes. He could already tell that this needed to be a private conversation. What's wrong, Katara? Hakoda asked his daughter. He left, she told him. What? He was a little confused. Who had left? Aang. He just took his gilder and disappeared. He has this ridiculous notion that he has to save the world alone. That it's all his responsibility. Maybe that's his way of being brave. It's not brave, it's selfish and stupid. She all but shouted at him. We could be helping him, and I know the world needs him, but doesn't he know how much we need him too? How could he just leave us behind? She demanded. You're talking about me too, aren't you? He asked quietly in return. How could you leave us, Dad? Tears fell from her eyes, but she tried to wipe them away. I mean, I know we had Gran and she loved us, but we were so lost without you. He had been a constant fact in their lives until the day he left. After that day, they just didn't know what to do. When she looked away and cried into her hands, he placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry, Katara, he told her. She gave him a hard hug. I understand why you left. I really do, and I know you had to go, so why do I still feel this way? I am so sad and angry and hurt. I love you more than anything, he assured her. You and your brother are my entire world. I thought about you every day I was gone and every night when I went to sleep, I would lie awake missing you so much it would ache. But they were also what kept him going and kept him fighting the Fire Nation. Location, Fire Nation. I will admit that I was outraged when I first learned that you decided to walk right into Akawan. But that rage has now turned into pride, Ozai said as he walked around Zuko. I am proud of you, Prince Zuko. I am proud because you and your sisters conquered Ba Sing Se. I am proud because when your loyalty was tested by your treacherous uncle, you did the right thing and captured the traitor. And I am proudest of all of your most legendary accomplishment, you and Azula slayed the Avatar. What did you hear? Zuko asked. He was shocked at what he heard. The last time he had checked, the Avatar had been sprinted away from them. He wasn't dead. Yao Jing told me everything, his father said to him. She said she was amazed and impressed at the power and ferocity the two of you possessed at the moment of truth. While he knew that was not the case, he decided to go with it for the moment. My older sister flatters us. We did what we had to do, no more, no less. Ozai walked back to the throne. You may leave. There will be a party later to celebrate you and your sister return. Zuko stood up, bowed to his father once more and turned around to leave the throne room. Location, Aang. He kept on flying, but as he did, he kept getting closer and closer to the water's surface. When he looked ahead, he saw something he had forgotten about. The blockade, he said to himself. But he wasn't going to stop by that. Using airbending to help him, he took a deep breath and closed the gilder. He dived into the sea and used waterbending to push himself past the ships. Once he was a safe enough distance, he broke the water's surface. Using his gilder to hold himself, he gasped for breath. He saw a log drifting by and swam towards it. After resting on it, he had an idea. Using his gilder as a sail, he used the log as a surfboard. But his good luck ended as a storm came through and the waves got choppier. He eventually slammed into a wave and lost hold on his gilder. Location, Fire Nation. Zuko left the throne room, his mind racing a mile a minute as he walked through the halls. As he turned at a corner in the corridor, he ran into Azula and Naruto. Good, I was looking for you too, he said to the two of them. What's the matter, Zuko? Naruto asked. After coming out of the meeting he had waited 3 years for, the blonde would have expected him to be a little happier. Then again, that might be a little difficult with the royal flaming asshole. Yes, what is the matter, little brother? Yao Jing asked from behind them. When they all turned to look at her, she was standing confidently in the middle of the hallway, a smug smirk on her face. Zuko looked her straight in the eye. Why did you tell father that Azula and I killed the Avatar? He asked her. Beside him, Azula's eyes widened slightly at the news, while Naruto's just went flat. You seemed so worried about how father would treat you because you hadn't captured the Avatar, she told him easily enough. I figured if I gave you and Azula the credit, you would have nothing to worry about and father would see that the two of you were working together. But why? Asked Azula. Yao Jing never did something like that out of the simple goodness of her heart. She didn't have a heart to begin with. I thought it would be a good idea to make it look like you two were working well together in father's eyes, she answered with a careless shrug of her shoulders. Nothing that simple, Zuko said, not with you. You've got another motive. She always did, ever since they had been children. She chuckled darkly. Really, Zuko, what other motive could I have? What could I possibly gain by letting you two get all the glory for defeating the Avatar? She asked. Unless, somehow, the Avatar was actually alive. She smirked at them. All that glory would suddenly turn to shame and foolishness. But you said it yourself, that was impossible. You illegitimate bitch, Naruto said, realizing what she had done. She had trapped Azula and Zuko by telling a simple lie to Ozai. Now, Naruto, that's not nice, she replied, waving her finger at him, like he was a child who had misbehaved. Let me guess, if the two of us were shamed, you would finally have you always wanted? Zuko asked her. It's a possibility, she admitted with the smirk still on her face. Azula barked a curt laugh at those words. It'll only happen if the two of us are dead in the eyes of Father. You're a mistake, Yao Jing. You always have been. Even Father thinks so. The smirk she wore died away when she heard those words. She started to walk forward until she was almost face to face with her half-siblings. If Father thought I was a mistake, then I would be dead. Dead. Apparently, I'm good for something. She turned around and walked away. She stopped and looked back at the two of them. Make no mistake, Zuko, Azula. I will get what I want. Her gaze turned to the third person. And when that day comes, I will enjoy breaking you, Naruto. He scoffed at those words. Lady, people have been trying to break me since I was born. I haven't broken yet. And you don't scare me. She said nothing. She just continued to walk away. Location, Aang. He held onto the log for dear life as the storm howled around him. He saw his gilder floating in the water, but he knew that if he tried to get it, the ocean would swallow him whole. He let out a scream as a tidal wave sent him under, but he was able to recover and swim back up to the surface with the log. I'm not going to make it, he whispered to himself as he once again held onto the log. I failed. As if to answer, lightning roared and flashed briefly in the sky. When it was the spirit of a man long dead floated above the water. Roku? You haven't failed, Aang, the spirit of the previous avatar said to him. But everyone thinks I'm dead again, he protested softly. They think I've abandoned them, and I'm losing this war. I'm letting this side of the world down. If anyone is to blame for this, it is me, Roku replied. I should have seen this war coming and prevented it. You inherited my problems and my mistakes. But I believe you are destined to redeem and save this side of the planet. I don't know. He had been trying to do that ever since he woke up to see Katara's face above him. And yet, at that moment, it felt like an impossible task. A pool of light shined down on him. You already saved the world, the voice of Princess Yu told him. He looked up and saw the moon breaking the clouds apart. The storm died down as the vision of you, garbed in white, descended towards him. And you'll save the world again, but you can't give up. Aang looked up at her. She was a reminder of what he could have done better. But she was also a reminder of all the people he had tried to save and did. You're right. I won't give up, he declared with conviction. He bent the sea to push him forward on a tidal wave while he used the log as a surfboard. You raised her hands and made the wave bigger, pushing him farther, before ascending back up to the moon. When the wave had finally died, Aang had washed up on Crescent Island, which was still erupting due to his actions. Location, Fire Nation. Zuko tried to keep his breath calm as he stood outside the door that would lead into the ballroom. Nervous, sir? Asked a nearby soldier. Somewhat, he admitted. The people I'd usually talked to for 3 years were soldiers. If I snap to attention and say sir, we know I belong in the military. With all due respect sir, I think you're already in the military. The joke made the soldiers and him chuckle, loosening the tension a little bit. Are you ready, sir? The soldier asked the prince once the laughter stopped. He stopped laughing and took a deep breath. Might as well. They opened the door and marched into the ballroom, where the party was in full swing. Ladies and gentlemen, the scarred dragon, Prince Zuko, the lead soldier announced. The nobles there politely clapped for as he descended the staircase. He looked around the huge, grand ballroom that was draped in colors of red. Hey Zuko, how have you been? Another teenager came up to him and asked. Before he was exiled, Zuko thought of him as a close friend. Now, he was just another face in the crowd. I've been well, he replied curtly, before walking on. Come on man, don't be a stranger, the guy replied, trying to catch up. Zuko stopped and glared at him. You are a stranger. Don't bother me, he told him before walking away again, leaving a stunned teenager behind. He seems to be doing well, Naruto noted. He and Azula as well as Ty Lee Mai, and the Sand siblings watched Zuko's progress as he made the obligatory walk through all the nobles there and talked to them. This is his first time back in court in over 3 years, Azula replied. It would be impressive if he didn't make a fool of himself. He just blew off a potential bootlicker in the first 2 minutes, Kankuro said. I think he'll do okay. But that's just bootlickers, Temari countered. He still has to deal with the actual nobles and military leaders that are here tonight. And those were on a whole different level than bootlickers. You're forgetting one thing, Temari, Naruto said to her, his voice completely serious. What? Fangirls, Gaara answered for his friend. Both Kankuro and Temari were surprised by that. You have got to be kidding, Temari declared. No, trust me. Zuko has fangirls, Naruto assured them. It's true. We saw them in Kozan, Azula supported. It had been a little disturbing to see at the time, but they had been there. Luckily, Governor Shun has managed to keep them at a tight leash. Guys? Ty Lee said. Could we stop talking about Zuko's fangirls? Mai's aura is getting darker. They looked at Mai. While they couldn't see her aura, they could the growing expression of murder on her face, and the small twitching of her hands, like they were demanding to throw something. Azula! Cried a familiar voice. They turned to see who spoke. They got their answer when the speaker came up to them and gave Azula a hug, who returned it. Cory? Asked Naruto. But as he asked, in his head he was thinking thank you, Kami. By having Mai distracted, she wasn't thinking about murdering people. Oh hey Naruto, she greeted the blonde, breaking the hug with Azula. You say hi to her first, then me. I'm hurt, he said with a hurt expression that everyone knew was a fake. Oh, don't worry, she told him with a smile on her face. You're still my big brother. Well, that's a relief, he said as the hurt expression evaporated from his face. Cory, what are you doing here? Azula asked her. She was surprised by her appearance, but she still welcomed it. You don't remember your last letter? Almost instantly, she remembered it. Oh, my apologies, I had completely forgotten about that. Hold on a minute, Naruto interrupted the two of them. What do you mean, letter? He asked, looking back and forth between the two girls. While you were off conning the Avatar, I was trading letters with Cory, Azula told him. My last letter offered her the chance to stay with us for a part of the summer. And I took her up on that offer, Cory finished. Naruto kept looking back and forth between the two of them before finally slumping his shoulders. Well, there's nothing I can do about it now, he conceded. But Cory, I want you to do 2 things while you're here. What? She asked him. 1. Don't earthbend. 2. Never be alone with her. He pointed to Yao Jing, who stood by Ozai in a servant uniform. While she looked smug to be near the Fire Lord, she also looked annoyed by what she was forced to wear. Why should I stay away from her? Cory asked. She had thought that person had been a servant. She's dangerous and she doesn't like me, Azula, or Zuko. She will try to use you against us. You're not kidding, are you? He had sounded completely serious the entire time he had spoken, but she wanted to be sure. He gave a grim smile. Welcome to politics. He heard a small noise, like someone clearing their throat, beside him. Oops, sorry, he apologized to the Sand siblings. He turned back to Cory. Cory, this is Gaara no Sabaku and his brother and sister, Kankuro and Temari. Guys, this is Cory Morishita, daughter of Yudao's mayor, he introduced them to each other. Hello, she greeted them with a bow, which they returned. So, you any good with a weapon? Asked Temari. The kunoichi could see that the girl had trained with something but wasn't sure what it was. I've trained with a meteor hammer. I should know, Naruto commented. You've tried to put me on the receiving end of the thing many a time. And every time, she had failed. "I will beat you one day, Naruto." Make no mistake, she promised him with convictions and determination in her voice. "And I will always look forward to that day," he replied, silently approving of the fire he could see in her eyes. He looked over at Zuko, who was now talking to a group of nobles. "Now would probably be a good time to lend some support for your brother, Azula. Show the nobility that you are actually brother and sister, not two people engaged in a power struggle over the throne," he told her quietly. She nodded in agreement and the two of them walked over to where Zuko stood. Naruto hung back a little so that Azula could look like she didn't have a babysitter. "The thing that astounds me is that even though you could have been killed once it was all over, you still led the defense. Why would you do that?" One of the nobles, a middle-aged man with a gut, asked Zuko. "It was my duty as a prince of the Fire Nation," Zuko answered evenly. He had been careful with group he talked to and this one was no different. "But you were banished," the noble's wife pointed out. "Even if he was a banished prince, he was still a prince," Azula said, stepping into the group and into the conversation. "My brother did the right thing when he led the defense at Akawan." "Oh, Princess Azula," the nobleman greeted her with a bow. "So, you approve of your brother's actions?" "Of course, I do," she answered. "I would have done the same thing. Although, I don't think I would have been able to fight on the front lines and come up with those spontaneous decisions," she admitted with a little laugh. "I think that Zuko has a knack for this kind of thing." Zuko shrugged his shoulder with nonchalance. "I spent 3 years on a ship surrounded by military personnel. You tend to pick up a few things." "Will you be taking an active part in this war?" a third noble asked him. "I hadn't thought about it," he admitted. "I mean, I have no official ranking. The soldiers I led just called me commander." "Ah, yes, the famous dragon's fangs. From what I've heard, the Earth Kingdom armies are afraid to go anywhere near Akawan because of them." He slapped Zuko on the back. "You've done a fine job with them, lad." "I just did what I had to do." It had been his duty, and he did it with all he could. Prince Zuko?" said a small voice. He looked around but didn't see anyone talking to him. "Yes?" he asked, not sure where the voice was coming from. "Forgive me, Prince Zuko. My daughter is terrible shy," the first nobleman apologized. He moved to the left a little, revealing his daughter, a little girl with short, black hair. "Now come on dear, ask Prince Zuko your question," he told her. The daughter, who looked to be about 10 years old, looked at Zuko, and buried her face in her father's side. I am sorry," she squeaked. Zuko knelt so that he was at eye level with the girl. "Is it my scar?" he asked her gently. She nodded once. "Very well, now try looking." She did and saw that he covered his left eye and ear with his hand, masking the scar. "What is your question?" I was just wondering how you were able to breath lightning," she said to him. He smiled. "When I was exiled, my uncle decided to try and teach me how to generate lightning. I couldn't do it, so he decided to teach me how to redirect it instead. Once I had gotten the movements down, I wanted to try it with actual lightning, but he refused. So, I went to look for my own. I ended on a mountaintop in the middle of a storm. It was in that storm I met someone I never would have expected to meet." "Who did you meet?" she asked, curiosity coloring her voice. "I met the king of the dragons, Bahamut," he answered with a semi-grand voice. "Really?" asked the girl, looking at him with wonder in her eyes. "You met the Dragon King? What did you do?" "I insulted him straight to his face. In return, he threw lightning at me, which I redirected back at him," he said with a straight face. What did he do?" she asked, almost afraid to find out. That did not sound like something one should do. Laughed it off and told me it had been a long time since anyone had done that to him. He came to visit me in my sleep when I was at Akawan and show me the path to breathing lightning, he finished. "Can I learn how to do it?" Are you a firebender? She nodded enthusiastically. Then you'll have to discover the secret for yourself. If I told you how to do it, it would only make it harder for you. Okay. I'll be sure to discover the secret, she declared with determination. Zuko smiled at her before standing back up and saying one last thing to each of the people there. Once he did, he walked away, taking his hand off of his face in the process. The kids got spunk, Naruto commented as both Zuko and Azula walked near him, allowing him to fall behind his princess. She'll make a good firebender. Yes, she will, Azula agreed. The three of them didn't go to any more groups. Instead, they went back to their own. How are you doing, Zuko? Ty Lee asked as he finally joined them. I'm not having the impact that's expected, he answered with a frown on his face. Whoever he spoke to had the same look on their faces. It was a look that told him that they didn't think he would be good enough. You seem to be doing fine to me, Cory said. He hadn't started a brawl with any of them, so that was a good thing. Zuko, this is Cory Morishita from Udao. Naruto quickly introduced her to the scarred dragon. Hello, Cory, he greeted. But despite my words and what I'm trying to say, they don't believe in me, he told them all. Well, what do you have to do to get them over to your side? Tamari asked him. I don't know. I've been away for 3 years and Uncle didn't teach me court politics. He had been more inclined to learn fire-bending techniques, and how to survive than how to speak the right words to the right people. Then you must win them over another way, Gaara told him. Got any ideas? He couldn't think of any. 1, Naruto said. It has its downsides and if it works, odds are we'll be hiding for the rest of the night. The others looked at him once he had said that. It was a weird thing to say. What exactly are you planning, Naruto? Mai asked him suspiciously. Luckily, Mai didn't have to receive an answer. She tapped Azula on the shoulder and pointed at the 2 men approaching her from the side. All of them formally bowed to the newcomers, except for the Sand siblings, who didn't recognize them. Naruto slightly winced inwardly when he realized that Governor Shun had arrived at the party, accompanied by Vatcher, who was surprisingly armed with just a pair of daggers. It's been a while, Lord Naruto. I heard of your role in helping the princess with the conquest of Ba Sing Se, and I would like to congratulate you both for accomplishing what even the infamous traitor General Iroh had failed to do. Both Naruto and Azula tried their best to not show any emotion, and even Mai had to prevent Zuko from reacting. It did work a bit, but Governor Shun turned to the prince in question. My prince. Lord Shun. It's been ages since we last talked, and I believe it was before I set off to lay siege at the North Pole, Zuko spoke gently. His face turned a bit dark. I thought you'd be in Kozan, managing the colony. Governor Shun nodded in agreement. I do, but there is something that needed to be done. Your father, the Fire Lord himself, has personally ordered me to come to the capital, to give a briefing on the Battle of Kozan. Why would my father be interested in a battle like that? Azula asked curiously. She started to notice Mai and Ty Lee taking several cups of watermelon juice, and gave them to the rest of the group. I mean, he is always busy administering the Fire Nation. Well, a group of officers who are Lord Naruto's allies were clamoring for his promotion to lieutenant, but you'll see the surprise. Governor Shun beckoned for Naruto to walk towards the throne, where the Fire Lord himself sat. Now is the time, Lord Naruto. Naruto knew exactly what Governor Shun wanted him to do. Although he did make that kind of promise back when they started to leave Kozan, it was not something that the stern-looking man would forget. Moreover, as he continued to walk closer towards the throne, Ozai's smirk continued to grow until he stopped and bent his knee. Governor Shun made a silent gesture for the bell ringer to ring the bell, as to force everyone in the party to become silent. Fire Lord Ozai, Naruto began, I apologize for the lack of respect that I have shown towards you and the throne in which I am sworn to obey. Furthermore, as Paragon of the Fire Nation, I have seen the errors of my ways, and have come to learn that even the Paragon must remain loyal to the nation that they serve. Ozai's smirk vanished suddenly. What brought you to apologize to me after so long? I would prefer to execute you for your blatant disrespect. Naruto continued on. If that is what my lord and liege wants, I would accept any punishment. Ozai beckoned for him to stand up. I will assume that this is more than just an attempt to make me change my mind about your promotion, correct? Ozai asked suspiciously. Not at all, my lord. As Governor Shun pointed out to me, the title of Paragon of the Fire Nation is almost like a noble title, only it has special responsibilities. He has also admonished me for my ill behavior and habits of making too many enemies within the Fire Nation. Ozai paused for a minute as he slowly digested what Naruto had said. While it is true that past paragons of the Fire Nation have stepped up under their authority in case the Fire Lord could not legally exercise their authority, he had not forgotten their main responsibility, which is to prevent the Avatar from going insane. Finally, he gave a small nod and sat down on his throne once again, but Naruto raised his hand. My lord, if I may make one more request on my part? Naruto asked again. This time, everyone stopped to hear what he will say next. What would that be, Paragon Naruto? I would humbly request to have a sparring match with His Highness, Prince Zuko. Only the people who were nearest to the throne could see the small smirk Ozai wore. Interesting, he finally said. He stood up from the throne. The fight shall be held in the Agni Kai chamber, he announced to all in the ballroom. We will allow Lord Naruto and Prince Zuko a half-hour to prepare. He walked down the steps, Yao Jing behind him, and out a door. The rest of the noblemen and servants followed his idea. Zuko stood on one side of the chamber while Naruto stood on the other. They had changed from the heavy, formal robes they wore for the party to simple training shirts and pants. Now they were just waiting for the fight to start. My prince! Yelled out Naruto. You're giving me an advantage with your top knot. He understood what Naruto meant. He reached up and undid the hairpiece, letting his hair fall down. Judging by the whispers the teenage daughters were whispering, they approved of his decision. How do you want to do this? He asked his opponent. The blonde shrugged his shoulders. Just show them what you got. Paragon Naruto, are you ready? Ozai called out from where he sat. It was a throne that was in the exact center spot in the benches, giving him a good view of each side. As he spoke, the servants holding their swords walked towards them. My prince and I are ready, Fire Lord, Naruto answered back formally. Let's get this started, he answered, drawing his jian from its sheath. The servant walked away with the sheath. Prince Zuko, are you ready? The Fire Lord asked his son. He nodded once, drawing his Dao swords. Hall walked away with the Dao sword sheath as well. Then begin. At those words, the gong rang, signaling the combatants to start their fight. They charged each other, swinging their swords with the intent to kill. The Dao swords and the jian clanged together as they made contact. They held them there, trying to force the other one back with strength. The hold was broken when Naruto tried to sweep Zuko's legs from underneath him, forcing him to backflip away. They stared the opponent down, slowly circling each other. They exchanged a few strikes, testing the other's reaction time and speed. Is this a dance or a fight? Naruto asked, swinging his jian at Zuko's shoulder. It is a dance, Naruto, just with swords. He parried the jian with one blade and tried to swipe at Naruto's midsection with the other. However, the jian swatted the blade away and struck his shoulder, cutting through the shirt. I guess so. The room was silent as the sleeve fell off his arm and fell to the floor. Are we done warming up? The blonde asked the prince. He looked at his bare arm, then at his opponent. Yeah, we're done. He spun into a roundhouse kick and bent a fireball at Naruto, making him duck. He pressed his advantage, swinging rapidly. His advantage didn't last long, as Naruto quickly recovered. The sword strike swung so fast, it almost looked like there was more one of them, two in case of the Dao swords. The spectators lost count of how many times one of the swords was inches away from drawing blood. Zuko had been right, it was a dance. And everyone in the stands could see it. They swung at each other at the same time, which sent both the Jian and the Dao swords flying into opposite sides of the arena walls. They only shared one look with each other before running to different sides of the arena floor and leaping into the crowds for their swords, making the people scatter when they landed. They grabbed their blades, turned back around and leapt back into the arena floor, allowing the people to sit back in their seats. Using the edge of his sword, Zuko bent a thin slice of fire at Naruto, who dispersed it with a swing of his Jian. They faced each, panting lightly. Then they looked at themselves. Zuko's shirt was shredded because of the cuts the Jian made. Naruto's shirt was shredded as well but had also caught on fire, not a big one, mind you, just a slow burning on the edges. Noticing that their shirts were barely more than scraps, they tore off the remnants. "Oh sweet Agni," Kori muttered as she looked at the two of them. A blush grew on her cheeks. "Enjoying the view?" Ty Lee asked with a grin on her face. "Oh yes. Naruto is something to look at, I'll admit to that." She was having a hard time looking away herself. I wasn't just looking at Naruto." Azula had a look of slight disgust when she heard those words. "Kori, that's my brother." She almost shouted at her. She may not get along with him well, but it was still disturbing. "I can't help it. He's right there," she protested, gesturing at him. "How am I supposed to ignore something like that? I don't know. Count the cracks in the wall or something." The two fighters shared a smile of acknowledgement with each other before charging again. This time, Zuko brought in fire bending. Since his hands were occupied, he used his feet. Every time he did a kick, fire was used as well. Sometimes it would hit Naruto, singeing his skin, but it would heal in a matter of seconds. The rest of time, he dodged the fire. "Well, Naruto has certainly improved from 3 years ago," Temari commented as she watched the two continue. "It was completely different from how he fought 3 years ago." "Is our big sister interested in him?" Kankuro asked her with a slight teasing tone in his voice. "That's not even funny, Kankuro," she told him with a scowl on her face. "If she had her fan on her, she'd brain him." "Enough," Gaara said to the two of them. They stopped once they heard that order. The fight raged on, the fighters getting fiercer and fiercer. Naruto also began to bring in punches and kicks, although Zuko did an impressive job blocking them. Sometimes, one would flip over the other, trying to strike the head. But the other would block and spin in the direction they landed. He deserves his reputation as a master of Dao swords, Naruto thought as they once again circled each other, trying to see a weakness in the other. "Yes, he does, Kit," the QB agreed as he watched the fight from inside his cage. "Be careful, one misstep, one mistake and it'll be over for you." He may not be a master of the Jian, but his ability to improvise makes up for that, Zuko noted. There were more than a few close calls when he kept changing his sword hand. He looked at himself and at Naruto. Both were now panting, slowing tiring. The pants they wore had seen some damage. They had gone long-sleeved pants to ragged shorts, which also displayed their legs to the single female members of the audience. "Shall we wrap this up, Prince Zuko?" Naruto asked. Zuko's response was to bend whips of fire off the edges of his Dao swords and swing them at the blonde. He danced around, over, and through the whips. Zuko then bent the whips to form into a circle of flame, trapping him. He leapt easily out of the fire, but that was what Zuko wanted. As Naruto was airborne, he was breaking himself into his yin and his yang energies, and then bringing them back into one. As his opponent landed, he breathed lightning. It flew towards Naruto, but as it turns out, he was ready. He took the stance that Zuko knew was the one for redirecting lightning. It struck his sword arm and traveled down into his stomach. He brought back up into his other arm and threw the lightning back at Zuko. He was surprised, but he was able to recover. He took the same stance, let the lightning hit one arm, and let it travel down into his stomach before bringing into his other arm and throwing it at Naruto again. He caught it again and tried to throw it back, but his aim was poor this time. The lightning fell to the arena floor and hit it hard. The ground shook, causing cracks to appear in the arena floor and shooting up dust. It caused a smoke screen so no one could see what was going on inside. When the dust finally cleared, Naruto was kneeling on the floor with Zuko standing over him, the Dao swords resting their points on his neck and heart. However, Naruto's Jin was also resting its point on Zuko's stomach. The gong ranged again and Ozai stood up his throne. This fight is a draw. Both combatants have proved themselves capable in the art of fighting. I applaud Prince Zuko for his use of fire bending, and am also pleased to have seen the breath of lightning myself, he praised his son. The crowd erupted into applause. Naruto and Zuko withdrew their swords from one another and stepped away from each other. Good fight, Zuko, Naruto said as and the other servant approached them with the sheaths. He handed his geon off to the servant, who took it without any hesitation and sheathed it. He bowed and walked away. Yes, it was, Zuko replied as he handed his Dao swords to who sheathed them, bowed and walked away. When did you learn how to redirect lightning? He had never shown how to do it to anyone else. I saw you practice the movements back in Ba Sing Se, the blonde answered. Didn't realize what it was for until you breathed lightning at the ambush. I figured it out afterwards. But I guess I still need to figure it out. He looked around the chamber and his face sprouted a look of panic. Zuko, we should probably leave now. Why? The scarred dragon asked, confused by what he said. We're hot, we're sweating, we're not wearing shirts, our pants are now ragged shorts, we've just finished a spectacular fight, and every woman in the audience who is single are looking at us like we're the last two men on this planet, and they want to pollinate like nobody's business. Naruto quickly rattled off the points. Zuko looked at the crowd and understood immediately. Naruto's definition pretty much hit the nail on the head. All the single girls, teenagers and young women alike, were crowding the front of the stands, pure lust shining in their eyes. He turned back to Naruto. Shall we run for our lives? He asked in a calm, pleasant voice. Oh yes, let's, Naruto answered in the same voice. The two of them ran out of the Agni Kai chamber with both frantic speed and energy. The ladies who were single chased after them. Eventually, they barricaded themselves inside Azula's private bathing room and didn't come out for the rest of the night. Location, Crescent Island. Aang woke up and saw that it was morning. He also saw that Momo was licking his face. Sitting up, he saw Appa standing in the water, and that Katara, Sokka, Toph and Akela were running towards him. You're okay. Katara cried as she hugged him. The others soon joined, making it a group hug. Even Appa and Akela joined in, kneeling in the waves. I have so much to do, Aang said as they broke the hug. I know, but you'll have our help, she reassured him. He would always have their help. You didn't think you couldn't get out of training just by coming to the Fire Nation, did you? Toph asked the air nomad jokingly. What about the invasion? Aang asked. We'll join up with my dad and the invasion force on the day of the eclipse, Sokka told him. His face had a neutral expression on it. And we also have to do something else. What's that? Stand up, Aang. He did so and Sokka did as well. Then, to the surprise of everyone, except Akela, he rammed his fist into Aang's stomach, making him to collapse to the ground with a pained gasp. Why did you do that? The Avatar asked the water paragon, trying to get his breath back. Because that was probably one of the most boneheaded things you have ever done. And because Kiba and the others weren't here to do it, he answered. Don't give me that look, Katara. You know as well as I do that they deserved it, he said after seeing the glare on Katara's face. She would have said something in Aang's defense, but he stopped her. He's right, Katara. I shouldn't have done that. Sorry, he apologized to Sokka, who accepted with a silent nod. Hey, what's... Toph began to say as she picked something out of the water. "Oh, it's your gilder." It was indeed Aang's gilder, ruined beyond repair. Aang stood up again and took the gilder from her. "That's okay," he said as the others stood up as well. "If someone saw it, it would give away my identity. It's better for now that no one knows I'm alive." He flew up to a small ledge that stood over the flow of lava. He raised the staff, gave a last couple of spins before stabbing it into a small trail of lave. He flew away to rejoin the others. Had he stayed a few seconds longer, he would have seen the staff catch fire and begin to burn. It was a small monument, one that said to the world that the Avatar was dead. Location: Fire Nation. By the time Naruto finished bathing himself after his intense spar with Zuko, the prince entered his room with a frown. Azula soon followed. Naruto noticed that Mai, Ty Lee and Corey weren't there. Mai's decision to host Corey proved to be a wise decision, as Yao Jing's presence would have made it even more dangerous for the visitor from Yudao. Since Naruto's public display of humility in front of the nobles, and the Fire Lord, some of the officers who initially disliked the Fire Nation Paragon now started to tolerate him a bit more. However, the officers and nobles who were loyal to Yao Jing remained hostile to Naruto. "Since when did you start addressing our father in such a formal tone?" Zuko asked curiously. "It's not like you've had a change of heart." Naruto nodded grimly. "Both Azula and Governor Shun told me that if I was going to be promoted to an officer's rank, I needed to start showing the Fire Lord some respect. I didn't even have a choice in the matter, as Governor Shun also told me that the title of Paragon is almost like an officer's rank, only it's not." Azula placed her hand on her brother's shoulder. "I was there when Governor Shun chewed him out. As much as we don't like to admit it, having Naruto promoted to at least the rank of lieutenant would dampen the resentment that the senior officers have towards him." Zuko closed his eyes and sighed in resignation. After hearing Azula's story about their time in Kozan and Yudao, including the incident with the cocky lieutenant who bravely challenged Naruto to a fight, he started to understand a bit more behind the charade, but Naruto was not comfortable with his role. "Well, in that case, I will make a formal request to my father to put you under my command. I know your main role is to protect my sister, but it will take time for you to get used to your new position." Azula opened her mouth in shock, but Zuko held up his hand. "Azula, you know as well as I do that the nobles will expect us to take a more active role in the war." "I do. Besides, by keeping Naruto as our common ally, we could use him in any power struggle against Yao Jing. She may not look competent in my eyes, but she's a dangerous schemer." She turned to Naruto with a determined look. "Naruto, promise me one thing only." Naruto looked back at her. "What is that?" "Promise us that if you are forced with a command to become Yao Jing's bodyguard, you will refuse. Not just out of loyalty to us, the trueborn children of our father, but out of the ancient laws of succession, as set by Fire Lord Zoryu." Naruto nodded. He knew what she meant. During the reign of Fire Lord Zoryu, he was engaged in a vicious power struggle against his illegitimate brother, Prince Chaijin. The struggle was caused by the numerous extramarital affairs that his father and predecessor had engaged in, which resulted in Chaijin's birth. Personally, he could not help but compare Ozai's role in the birth of Yao Jing to former Fire Lord Cheria's dalliances. "Don't worry about it. I won't bow down to a vicious little schemer like Yao Jing. It's what she would have wanted," he told Azula. "I'd prefer death to servitude under her." Chapter 21, Culture Clash and Visits. Location: Fire Nation. Zuko tossed and turned, trying to sleep. Realizing he couldn't sleep because of one single thing, he got out of the bed and grabbed a heavy cloak. He walked out of his room and down the hall, making sure that no one saw him. He left both the palace and the city, climbing over the rim. Once he was over, he walked the path to the royal prison, reaching it while it was still dark. He stopped and looked up at the prison itself. A guard walking on the balcony saw him. "Who's there?" he called, only seeing a cloaked and hooded person who walked away. Taking a last glance at the person, he resumed his watch. A cloud flew over a couple of islands. I think I see a cave below. Aang's voice came from within the cloud as it descended to the largest island. SSSH. Keep quiet. Sokka's voice ordered. The cloud floated down next to the cave and then dispersed, revealing Appa and his passengers. Sokka leapt down from the saddle, Akela alongside him. The wolf raised his head and sniffed the air. He did that for a few seconds before shaking his head at Sokka. He looked at the others. Great job with the cloud disguise, but next time, let's disguise as the kind of cloud that knows how to keep its mouth shut, he told them all. Yeah, we wouldn't want a bird to hear us chattering there and turn us in, Toph remarked with the barest amount of sarcasm voice as the rest of the team got off Appa. We're in enemy territory, Toph. If we're not careful, someone will take notice of us, he pointed out to her. Sokka, would you stop being paranoid? Katara asked her brother with slight exasperation. He looked her straight in the eye. The last time you told me to stop being paranoid, we let the Fire Nation walk into Ba Sing Se and take it right under our noses. Both Katara and Aang flinched as if his words had smacked them in the face. Maybe we should get into the cave, Toph suggested, hoping to move past the suddenly awkward feeling. They all nodded in agreement and walked into the cave, seeing that it was big enough and roomy enough to bring in Appa. Well, this is it, Sokka announced. We're going to be living like this for a while, just going from one cave to the next. We don't need to become cave people, Katara pointed out. What we need is some new clothes. Yeah, blending in is better than hiding out, Aang agreed with the resident waterbender. If we get Fire Nation disguises, we'll be just as safe as we would be hiding in a cave. No one would look for them if they looked like they came from the Fire Nation. Plus, they have real food out there, Toph pointed out from where she sat. Does anyone want to sit in the dirt and eat cave hoppers? She slammed her hand against the wall, making cave hoppers jump out of the wall. Momo snatched one and ate it before looking at the others. Akela looked at the lemur with slight disgust. All right, let's get some new clothes, Sokka declared. They eventually found clothes that were hanging out to dry outside a house that was right by a waterfall. I don't know about this, Aang said as they crouched behind a rock wall near the house. These clothes belong to somebody. It felt wrong to do this. I call the silk robe. Katara shouted before jumping over the wall and running towards the clothes. Both Sokka and Akela groaned at the same time. By the spirits, my sister is an idiot sometimes, the tribesman swore. But if it's essential to our survival, then I call the suit, Aang finally said, keeping his voice down after Akela threw him a look and slightly bared his teeth. They all hopped over the wall and ran between the hanging clothes, grabbing different articles of clothing. They all hid behind a different rock wall and started to redress themselves. Tada! Declared Aang after he tied a headband around his head, finishing his disguise. I'm a normal kid. He certainly looked the part, especially since the headband covered his tattoo. Toph was already dressed in her disguise, but was looking down at her feet, which were covered by shoes. I should probably wear shoes. But then I won't be able to see as well. She sat down and began to pull on the shoe. She forced her foot through the sole, sending flying. It would have hit Sokka, had he not ducked. Sorry, shoes, she said. Finally, a stylish shoe for the blind earthbender. How do I look? Katara asked them, coming back from changing in her disguise. She had let her hair out of her braid and dressed in a red dress. Aang scratched the back of his head, blushing. He thought she looked quite beautiful. He then noticed something. Your mom's necklace. He pointed at her neck. Oh yeah. She saw what he was talking about and took it off. I guess it's pretty obviously water tribe, isn't it? Its blueness would stand out against all the red she was now wearing. Hey, Katara, Sokka said with an annoyed look. What part of we're in enemy territory did you decide to ignore? You could have woken the person sleeping by the door with your shouting. And don't even think about telling me to stop being paranoid, he told her as she was about to open her mouth. Hey, guys, let's calm down, Aang said, playing peacemaker. Let's just go into town and get our supplies. Alright. He looked at Akela. You're going to have stay with Appa while we're in town. Akela gave him a look that said, you cannot be serious. I am perfectly serious. You're a white wolf, I think it's going to be pretty obvious where you're from if you come with us. Akela looked at him again, and then looked back at the house. Before anyone could stop him, he trotted back over to the house. He stopped at a big pile of soot and jumped into it. After rolling over in the soot for a couple of minutes, he got out and trotted back to them. His pure white fur had turned into sooty black. Sokka just looked at the wolf. I am buying you the biggest, juiciest bone I can find in town, he declared. Judging by the wolfish grin Akela had on his face, and the speed his tail was wagging it, he approved. Azula and Kori faced each other in the training yard. That was a good workout, Kori, Azula complimented as she sheathed her daggers. The two of them had gone out to the yard to spar incredibly early in the morning, having just finished said spar. Thanks, Azula. I wasn't sure if I would be able to hold my own against you, Kori replied, lowering her meteor star. It had turned out to be an even match. The princess of the Fire Nation shrugged her shoulders. I'm not a master with daggers, so you had an advantage. She was more inclined to use her bending than her daggers. It wasn't much of an advantage. She looked around the training yard, seeing how it empty was. Funny, I thought that half-sister of yours would have been here before us. What? You mean Yao Jing? Her voice filled with distaste as she said her sister's name. You did say she was a firebender. Don't all firebenders practice their bending as the sun rises? She hadn't seen the bastard daughter of the Fire Lord since the morning before. Most of us do. While Yao Jing is a competent firebender, she would rather fuss with her hair than practice. It was one of the many things she disliked about her elder sister. She valued how she looked over how she fought. Hey, Azula! Called out Ty Lee as she and Mai walked out of the building adjourning the training yard. Where Naruto and those sand people go? The acrobat asked. Naruto had to visit one of the military bases on the outer islands, so he decided to take the Sand siblings with him, Azula answered with a shrug of her shoulders. Her bodyguard did stuff like this all the time. And you're not irritated that he's gone? She asked with an innocent-looking smile on her face. He doesn't have to be at my side all the time, Ty Lee. She snapped. As a matter of fact, she was irritated, but she had a guest in her house, and it would not do to be a bad-tempered host. Oh, come on, Azula. We know you like him. The acrobat placed a lot of emphasis on that word, smiling. She blushed at the implication of the word. Feeling a hand on her shoulder, she turned around and Kori standing behind her. I approve, the daughter of Yudao's mayor declared. Huh? Azula asked, completely confused by what she said. What did she mean by that? You have my approval to date Naruto. Clearly, the princess of the Fire Nation had not been expecting that for an answer. Who said anything about dating? She half shouted as her blush got redder. Wait a minute, why do I need your approval to date him in the first place? He is my big brother. I have to keep an eye out for him. He was never actually adopted by your parents, Mai pointed out. And I don't need your approval since he's my bodyguard, Azula told her. And you've already slept with him, Ty Lee announced, adding fuel to the fire. You what? Shouted Kori, looking at the princess with shock on her face. Not like that. Azula tried to defend herself. She's literally slept with him, that's it, Mai said in a deadpan voice. We know this because every time we find them, it's hard to wake her up. She'll usually tighten her grip and burrow her head into his chest. The princess of the Fire Nation decided it was time to give her two friends a beating. Okay, that's it. Come here, you two. She lunged for Mai and Ty Lee. Where do you think you're going? Cory demanded, leaping after her. Free for all. Cheered Ty Lee. Mai just ready to knife. They had gone into town and bought a few necessary accessories. Katara got a new necklace, Toph got a new headpiece, and Sokka had gotten a top-knot piece. Aang hid Momo inside his shirt. I used to visit my friend Kuzan here 100 years ago, he told the rest of the group as they stood behind a wall, away from the street. So, everyone can follow my lead and stay cool. Or, as they say in the Fire Nation, stay flamin'. He started to walk out onto the street. I've got a better idea, Sokka said, grabbing Aang by his arm and pulling him back. How about we act like normal citizens, and not sound like we're from 100 years ago? Seconded, Toph agreed. It would probably be better, Katara said, outvoting Aang. Fine, let's go, he grumbled. They walked out onto the street and acted normal. It worked as people didn't pay a second look at any of them, not even the wolf. Eventually, they stopped in front of a restaurant. Oh, we're going to a meat place? The disguised air nomad asked as they looked at the place. Everyone here eats meat, Aang. Even the meat, Sokka pointed to a hippo cow eating meat. He was a little disgusted by that. You guys go ahead. I'll just get some lettuce out of the garbage, he told them. They walked into the restaurant, leaving him alone in the street. He would have greeted everyone who passed by as hot man, except he could have sworn Akela was somehow watching his every move. After a few minutes, he saw a couple of guards coming his way. It's over, the lead guard said to him. We caught you. Who, me? He asked, confused and worried about what was going on. It couldn't be more obvious that you don't belong here. The next time you play hooky, you might want to take off your school uniform. He looked down at his clothes before giving a nervous chuckle. The guard grabbed hold of him and took him away. They led him to a school and then shoved him into a classroom. As he regained his balance, he saw that every kid in the class was looking at him. They were surprised to see him, if the looks on their faces were anything to go by. Oh, is this a new mind ready for molding? The teacher asked from where she stood at the front of the classroom. Aang wasn't sure if this would go, but he decided to go with it for now. That's right. Let the molding begin, he answered, knocking his head to emphasize his point. Wait a minute. The guards who were leaving had stopped when they heard the teacher's voice. Ah, you're not from the Fire Nation. She walked around him, taking a closer look. Clearly you're from the colonies. Yeah, the colonies, of course, the Fire Nation colonies in the Earth Kingdom, he quickly agreed. If it helped him not being found out, he would go with it. Your etiquette is terrible, she chastised him as the guards left. In the homeland, we bow to our elders. She walked back to her desk and turned to face him. Like so. She showed how to salute. Sorry, ma'am, he apologized before attempting a salute. He did it wrong and the teacher caught him on it. He glanced at one of the students, who quickly showed him how to do it correctly. He then saluted the teacher correctly. And we don't wear head coverings indoors. She pointed her stick at his headband. I have a scar. It's really embarrassing. Very well, she said, willing to let it go. What is your name? Or should we just call you mannerless colony slob? He chuckled. Just slob is fine. When he saw that she wasn't laughing with him, he tried a different tactic. Or, Kuzan, he said the last part like he was introducing himself to the class. Thank you for taking the time to visit our base, Lord Naruto, the commander of the base said, saluting the blonde as he and his companions were leaving. Also, congratulations on your new promotion to lieutenant. Not a problem, and thank you for the compliment. I had to give a seminar, and I got the excuse to show my friends around, Naruto replied. I trust you'll be able to handle the troops now? The soldiers here had been a bit rowdy and full of themselves before he had arrived. Yes, sir, the commander promised with a nod of his head. Then we'll be off. He and the Sand siblings walked out of the base and onto the road that led away from it. Nice seminar there, Naruto, Kankuro told him with slight praise in his voice. I wasn't exactly expecting those practical demonstrations though. But it had been quite amusing to watch. The blonde shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. If you want to convince a rookie soldier that he is not invincible, you have to deflate his ego and his pride. And so, you decided, in the middle of the seminar, to have 18 of the rookie soldiers try to attack you at the same time, Temari said. She would have thought that had been a bit too much, until she saw him manhandle them all. It looked like you took a page out of every Jonin's book on how to deflate one's ego. It knocked them off their high horses, which was the point of the entire thing. And if they were off the horse, they were more likely to live through the war rather than die in it. I will, however, thank you for not comparing my methods to that of Kakashi's. What do you plan to do now? Gaara asked. Again, he shrugged his shoulders. Well, we have a couple of days left before we have to go back to the capital. Why don't we just hang around the island? You mean like a vacation from a vacation? Temari asked. That sounds about right. Kankuro shrugged. We don't have anything else to do. The bell rang, signaling the end of the day. Kids walked out of their classes and into the courtyard. Aang walked through the courtyard. We made it through the day, Momo, he told the lemur hiding in his shirt. And it was pretty fun. Don't let the headmaster catch you with that monkey, the girl who helped him back in the class said as she stood behind him. He quickly hid Momo and turned around. What monkey? Don't worry, I'm not a tattletale, she assured him. My name's Anji. I like your headband by the way. Before he could reply, an older student shoved past him. Anji, you don't have to babysit the new kid, he told her, placing an arm over her shoulder. Wow, you must be one of those popular kids I've been hearing about, Aang said, after giving a quick salute. That's right. Now listen, friend. I know you're from the colonies, so I'll say this slowly. Anji is my girlfriend. Don't forget it. He poked Aang on the chest to emphasize his point. The shirt moved, but Aang pushed the moving object down before giving an apologetic smile. Both Anji and her supposed boyfriend walked away, but not before the boyfriend made an I'm watching you gesture at him. It was nice meeting you, Aang said, raising his hand in farewell. Another boy ran up to him. I don't believe it, he didn't beat you up. Not even a little, he said in wonder. The disguised avatar brushed it off like it was nothing. I guess I'm just lucky. We were on our way to play hide and explode. You want to come? The boy offered. I'd love to, he answered. He followed the group and spent the afternoon playing hide and explode, which is probably not good for one's health in the long term. Once night had fallen, he made his way back to the cave. Where have you been? Katara demanded as he walked into the cave, covered in dust and soot, with Momo on his shoulder. We've been worried sick. When they had come out of the restaurant and didn't see him, they knew something had happened. But they also knew that they couldn't do anything right off the bat without causing alarm, so they waited. I got invited to play with some kids after school, he told her as he undid the headband. Momo leapt off his shoulder and landed next to Akela, who was chewing on a bone. Sokka sprang up. After what? He demanded. I enrolled in a Fire Nation school and I'm going back tomorrow, the air nomad explained. Enrolled in what? The tribesman repeated before sitting down again. He's an idiot. I swear he's an idiot, he muttered to himself. Akela heard him and nodded in agreement. The guard stood outside a cell door, facing one end of the hallway. Hearing footsteps behind him, he turned around and leveled his spear. You again? He said as the same cloaked person he saw the previous night walked towards him. Stop where you are. He ordered. The cloaked person raised his head, allowing the guard to see his face. Prince Zuko. Zuko grabbed the guard by the shirt and slammed him into the wall, making him drop his spear. I'm going in for a visit. You're going to stand guard here, and no one is going to know about this. He released his grip on the guard and then walked into the cell. Uncle, it's me, he announced, lowering the hood. Iroh said nothing. He just turned his back to look away. Aang, I'm trying to be mature and not immediately shoot down your idea, but it sounds really terrible, Sokka stated bluntly. Yeah, we got our outfits. Why do you need to go to school for? Asked Toph, a slight disgust emphasized on the word school. Every minute I'm in that classroom, I'm learning new things about the Fire Nation, Aang told them. I already have a picture of Fire Lord Ozai. He held up a painting of the Fire Lord for them to see. And here's one I made out of noodles. He held up a second picture. While that is impressive, it's still too dangerous for you to go there, Sokka told him. It was too risky to even try again. I guess we'll never find out about the secret river then. It goes right to the Fire Lord's palace. We were supposed to learn about it in class tomorrow, he said, trying to be sly. Sokka just looked at Akela. Could you bite him, please? The wolf stood and lunged for Aang's arm, which he pulled out of the way with a yelp. Don't try and fool me, Aang. If there was a secret river, why would they tell kids its location? The tribesman told him. Come on, Sokka, just a few more days, please? He pleaded. He really wanted to do this. It was fun. He gave a small groan, knowing that the air nomad would not let it go. Fine, but if we get noticed, we're leaving. Flameo, hot man. Cheered Aang before he ran out of the cave. Flameo? Repeated Sokka as he looked at Katara. She just shrugged. Zuko stared at his uncle's back. You brought this on yourself, you know. No. He said. We could have returned together. You could have been a hero. Iroh said nothing. He just shifted his weight and stared at the wall. You have no right to judge me, uncle. I did what I had to do in Ba Sing Se, and you're a fool for not joining me. Iroh still just sat there. You're not going to say anything? When he didn't get a reply, Zuko destroyed a stool with a fire-enhanced punch in anger. You're a crazy old man. You're crazy. And if you weren't in jail, you'd be sleeping in a gutter. He stormed out of the cell, slamming the door behind him. The teacher walked into the classroom and the students stood up. One student stood up slower than the rest. Good morning, class, the teacher said as she sat down in front of her desk. Recite the Fire Nation oath. The students turned to the back of the room where a painting of Ozai hung on the wall. They bowed their heads and saluted. My life I give to my country, with my hands I fight for Fire Lord Ozai and our forefathers before him. With my mind, I seek ways to better my country, and with my feet may our march of civilization continue. They all recited. Aang tried to follow the oath but failed due to the fact he didn't know it. His attempt made the other students giggle and caught the attention of the teacher. Since it's obviously hilarious to mock our national oath, we'll begin with a pop quiz on our great march of civilization, she announced as the students sat back down. The students groaned but grabbed their paper and pens. Question 1. What year did Fire Lord Sozin battle the Air Nation armies? Seeing Aang's raised hand, she looked at him. Kyuzan? Is that a trick question? He asked, standing. The other students looked at him. The air nomads didn't have a formal military. Sozin defeated them by ambush. His statement made the students look at him like he had grown a second head. Well, I don't know how you could possibly know more than our national history book. Not unless you were there 100 years ago, she said with barbed sarcasm. Realizing that he was treading on thin ice, he sat back down. I'll just write down my best guess, he replied, quickly writing down his answers. The class continued and once they were down, they went to the music hall. He was given the Tsunji horn. When the music started, he took a deep breath and began to play very loudly and badly, all the while doing a tap dance with his feet. The other people playing stopped and watched him. "Kyuzan?" asked the music teacher. He stopped playing and saw that everyone was looking at him. "I know. I'm a terrible tsunji horn player." It was a little embarrassing to admit, but he was. "No, child," the teacher said. "That hullabaloo going on with your feet, is that a nervous disorder?" He looked at his feet and then back at the teacher. "I was just dancing." "You do dances here in the homeland, right?" he asked the students. "Not really, no," one of the students told him. "Dancing is not conducive to a proper learning environment," the music teacher told him, walking away from his podium. "Young people must have rigid discipline and order." "But what about expressing yourself?" he asked back. Surely, they had to have had that. "I know sometimes we're so ruled by our love for our nation that we can't control our own bodies," the teacher said as he walked back to the podium. "If you must, you may march in place quietly next time the urge hits you." He waved his conducting stick, and the others started playing again. Aang played a few notes while quietly marching before stopping completely, feeling somewhat dejected. After the music class, they were let outside for break. As he walked outside, Aang could hear the other kids whispering about what he did. He stopped walking before he crashed into Anji. "Hi, Kyuzan," she greeted him. "I really liked that crazy dance you were doing." "Thanks, Anji. I could show it to you again if you like," he offered. A burst fire hit the books he was carrying in his arms, reducing them to ashes and surprising him. "What did you say, colony trash?" Hyde demanded from where he stood in a fire-bending stance. He walked up to Aang. "You're going to show her something? Something?" "Just some dance movements," the disguised air nomad told him, seeing nothing wrong with what he said. "Nobody shows my Anji anything, especially movements." He tried to attack Aang, but he kept missing because the disguised avatar kept dodging. The result almost looked like a dance, keyword, almost. Hyde tried to hit Aang with a haymaker, only to have his fist encased in sand, stopping the punch. "That is enough." Everyone turned to look at who had spoken. Aang was shocked and surprised. It was Gaara, who he hadn't seen since Ba Sing Se. "Who are you?" Hyde demanded, glaring at the foreigner. "You're another one from the colonies, aren't you? Protecting your fellow trash, I see. Maybe I should teach you how to respect your betters." "It would not be wise of you to attack me," Gaara told him. "I don't want to hear it, trash." He charged, swinging wildly. His efforts to hit Gaara were futile, as his opponent would lean to the side to avoid the punch, tilt his head, or use his sand to block the punches. Eventually, the redhead had enough and used his sand to push Hyde away, knocking him to the ground. That was when the headmaster decided to make his appearance. "What is going on here?" he demanded as he helped Hyde stand up. The new kid attacked Hyde and then that stranger joined in. One of Hyde's flunkies cried, pointing at Aang and then at Gaara. The headmaster looked at Aang. "Picking fights on your second day?" he asked rhetorically. "We need to have a conference to discuss your punishment. Bring your parents to my office after school." "Parents?" repeated Aang. "But don't be late." He turned his attention to Gaara. "And you? You are going to be in a lot of trouble for attacking my star pupil," he threatened. "That's funny," Naruto's voice rang out as he joined them, Kankuro and Temari right behind him. "From what I saw, your star pupil attacked a foreign head of state and a close friend of mine," he told the headmaster. While Aang was having a panic attack from seeing the blonde, Hyde sneered at him. "Who in Agni's name are you?" he demanded in an arrogant voice. Naruto didn't even spare him a glance. He just looked straight at the headmaster. "And here I thought your school taught children how to respect their betters," he remarked with a slight frown. The headmaster bowed in apology. I am sorry, my lord, he said. He had no idea the man before him would be here. Otherwise, he would have welcomed him. You don't have to bow to him, sir, Hyde said aloud, still sneering at the blonde. He's a piece of trash. Quiet, Hyde. The headmaster barked at him. You will be respectful. This is Lord Naruto, paragon of the Fire Nation and bodyguard to Princess Azula. Hyde's sneer was replaced with a mixture of horror and shock. The rest of the students stared at the paragon with awe and wonder in their eyes. And this is Gaara no Sabaku, the Godame of Sunagakure, and his brother and sister, Kankuro and Temari. Naruto introduced the Sand siblings. Once he did, he looked at Hyde, examining him very carefully. If he is going to be a part of the future of the Fire Nation, then the Fire Nation is doomed, he finally declared. What? Yelled Hyde, the look he wore turned from horror and shock to outrage. Kid, I can tell what your entire military career is going to be like just from your actions. Oh yeah, what's it going to be like? The outrage vanished, replaced by a cocky arrogance. He was sure to be a top-ranking general, perhaps even on the Fire Lord's Council. Dead. Within a week. Killed by your own soldiers, the blonde answered with a deadpan voice. You will keep quiet, Hyde, the headmaster ordered as the student was about to open his mouth. They did not need to suffer any more embarrassment. So, what actually happened here? Naruto asked aloud, looking at all the students there. Kyuzan here offered to show me some dancing moves, Onji said, pointing at Aang. Hyde overheard us and tried to attack him. Did Kyuzan fight back? She shook her head. No, my lord, he just avoided the punches. And your name is? Onji, my lord, she introduced herself, bowing to him. Okay, number 1, don't call me lord. It makes me sound like I have a stick up my ass. Giggling ensured around the courtyard when he said that. Number 2, is all that happened? She shook her head again. No sir. When, She looked uncertainly at Gaara. Just call him Gaara, kid, Naruto told her. If you're feeling formal, call him the Kazekage. Oh okay. When the Kazekage stopped Hyde from attacking Kyuzan, he tried to attack him. Yeah, we saw that part. He turned his attention to Aang. When were you planning to show Onji these dances moves? He asked. What? The disguised avatar squeaked out, feeling nervous. He wasn't sure if the Fire Paragon knew who he was or not, and, quite frankly, he was hoping for not. You hurt me. When were you going to show her the dancing moves? After school, I swear. All right then. He turned to face the headmaster. I assume that your star pupil will be properly punished? The headmaster had a look of defeat as he bowed. Yes, sir. He didn't want to do it, but the paragon would now be expecting it. So, he had to do it. Why am I being punished? Demanded Hyde. He was the one who was going to teach her dancing movements. He was going to do it after school, Naruto told him. If Kyuzan was going to teach her the dance moves outside of school, then there is nothing the school can do. He looked around the courtyard as the headmaster and the star pupil left. Now that's done, and since I'm here, I've got a question for you all here. What's that, sir? Onji asked. He gave a goofy grin that made him look younger. Anybody up for a game of tag? Orange is such an awful color, Mai stated as she and Zuko watched the sun setting. They were having a little picnic on a cliff facing the sea and the setting sun. He couldn't help but snicker at those words. You're so beautiful when you hate the world, he told her. I don't hate you, she replied. I don't hate you too. They kissed but were interrupted when Azula cleared her throat. They looked to see her standing just off of the sheet they were sitting on. Zuko, could I have a word with you? She asked her brother. Can't you see we're busy? He asked back, annoyed that she would show up now of all times. Please, she said, surprising him. Mai stood up, realizing that Azula wasn't going to go away. "I'll leave you two alone," she told Zuko before walking away. Azula waited until her friend was out of earshot before speaking. "So, you've been visiting Uncle in the prison tower?" He stood up. "Who told you?" he demanded. He had tried to keep those visits a secret. "You did, just now," she answered with a small smirk. He sighed in defeat and sat back down. "Okay, you caught me." "You need to be more careful," she warned him, the smirk disappearing from her face. She was now serious. "If people find out you've been to see Uncle, they'll think you're plotting with him. And then Yao Jing will whip those people into a frenzy which she'll use to get me killed," he finished for her, seeing where she was going with that thought. She nodded in agreement. "Exactly, and it will take her one more step closer to the throne." "Okay, that's it. We're leaving," Sokka declared after Aang told him what happened at the school. The fact that Naruto showed was enough to make the tribesmen want to keep moving. "I'm not ready to leave yet," Aang protested. "I'm having fun for once, just being a normal kid." "You don't know what it's like, Sokka. You get to be normal all the time." "Ha, ha," Toph laughed. Sokka ignored her. Instead, he focused on the problem they were having. "Listen guys, those kids at school are the future of the Fire Nation," the Air Nomad explained to the rest of the team. "If we want to change this place for the better, we need to show them a little taste of freedom." "What could you possibly do for them?" Sokka asked. "I'm gonna throw them a secret dance party." He did a little tap dance to emphasize his point. The others just stared at him like they couldn't believe what he had just said. Finally, Sokka walked up to him and smacked him across the back of the head. "Ow. What was that for?" he demanded, clutching his head. "I was making sure your brain was actually working," the tribesman told him. "For the love of the spirits, you were almost caught today, Aang. If Naruto had recognized you, we would have had the entire Fire Nation army coming after us. And if that happened, there goes the invasion plan." "But he didn't come after me," the Avatar protested. "And it's not like he'll be there if we hold the party. Besides, we know that Gaara, Kankuro and Temari are alive." "But now they're with him now," Toph pointed out. It had been a little surprising to learn that the Sand siblings were with the Fire Nation now. Asuma and the others told us that Gaara considers Naruto to be one of his closest friends, Katara reminded the blind earthbender. "And besides, Naruto seemed a little different," Aang said. He remembered the game of tag they played. Naruto didn't look like the person who had been after them. He looked like someone who was having fun. "What do you mean?" "I think there are things about the Fire Nation he doesn't like." He looked a little disgusted when he looked at Hyde and the headmaster. And the way he talked about the Fire Lord, it sounded like he didn't hold him in high esteem. "Maybe we can." He trailed off into silence. "Maybe we can what?" Sokka asked him. "Maybe we can convince him to join us." "I'm sorry. I think I just heard something stupid," the tribesman said. "Could you repeat yourself?" "You heard me, Sokka," Aang told him. "If we can convince Naruto to join us, Gaara, Kankuro and Temari would join us as well." "Aang, have the past couple of months taught you nothing about Naruto?" The blonde was more likely to attack them than talk to them. "We can still try." "Hey, back on the subject of the secret dance party," Toph said. "Are we still doing it?" "Yes, we are," the Air Nomad declared. The rest of the day was spent passing the information out to the students and getting ready for it. By the time night had fallen, they had lit the cave up with a lot of candles while Toph bent the earth up into a stage for the musicians to play on. "It seems so silly to have a dance party," Sokka said, placing down candles. "Don't think of it as a dance party," Aang told him as he put on his headband. "But as a cultural event celebrating the art of fancy footwork." He did a little dance to emphasize his point. Toph felt vibrations coming from her feet, telling her that people were getting closer. They're coming, she announced for everyone in the cave to hear. Everybody, stop bending. Aang walked over to Appa. Sorry, buddy. You should probably wait out back. The sky bison grumbled as it walked out the back door. I know. You've got fancier feet than anybody, and 6 of them. The air nomad called after him as he left. Sokka looked at Akela. You're going too. We're not risking someone petting you and finding the soot, he told the wolf. Akela padded after Appa. Soon enough, both animals had disappeared. Aang noticed that the students had arrived, so he put on a smile. The student musicians took their places on the stage and started a tune. Ladies and gentlemen, the Flamey-os. He announced in a loud voice to all the students there. This is ought to get everyone dancing, he said to himself, before turning around. Not one of the students was even moving. Now what do we do? One of them asked. This is when you start dancing, Aang told him, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I don't think my parents want me dancing in a cave, a somewhat chubby boy said. Yeah, what if someone finds out? Asked another student before running back into the crowd. Oh boy, Aang muttered, rubbing the back of his head. This was going to be a lot harder than he thought. Listen guys, dancing isn't something you think about, he explained to them. It's a form of self-expression that no one can ever take away from you. Maybe it was different in the colonies, Kuzan, but we don't do that here, the first student told him. Sure, you do, you have for generations. It just so happens that I know several classic Fire Nation dances. 100 years ago, this was known as the Phoenix Flight. He got down low and started doing the movement, earning the kids' attention. And this is the Camelephant Strut. He went off into a different dance, which got a couple of girls to giggle. The boys were awed by his moves. Who knew Twinkle Toes could dance? Toph asked Katara as they sat at a table, watching him move. Katara just smiled at his actions. Zuko knelt in front of Iroha's cell, a basket of food in front of him. I brought you some Komodo chicken, he said as he pushed the basket into the cell. I know you don't care for it, but I figure it beats prison food. There was silence for a few minutes. I admit it, I have everything I always wanted, but it's not at all how I thought it would be. The truth is, I need your advice. He gripped the bars. I think the Avatar is still alive. I know he's out there. I'm losing my mind. Please, Uncle, I'm so confused. I need your help. Iroh remained silent. Forget it, I'll solve this myself. Waste away in here for all I care. He walked away from the cell. He opened the door and glanced back before leaving. Iroh still said nothing. The only thing he did was shed a single tear. Aang did a front flip through the air and landed on his feet, getting applause from the audience. He grabbed on Ji and pulled her out onto the dance floor. And this is how they do it in the ballrooms of Ba Sing Se. He started another dance, which Ji soon joined in. They looked pretty good together, Sokka commented as he watched the two of them dance together. If that's what you like, Katara muttered, looking away. However, she snuck a glance at them, feeling a little jealous. More kids started to join the two of them on the dance floor. Yeah, that's it. That's the sound of happy feet, Aang said. Even more kids joined in. Alright, go with that. Everybody freestyle. And freestyle they did. Soon, some of the shyer kids joined in the dancing. Katara just sat at one of the tables. Aang appeared in front of her and held out his hand, surprising her. I don't know, Aang, she said, looking away nervously. These shoes aren't really right for dancing, and I am not sure I know how to. Take my hand, he told her. Okay. She took his hand and he pulled her onto the dance floor. He whispered something in her ear, and she nodded in agreement. They bowed to each other, crossed arms and began to circle one another. Aang, everyone's watching, she told as the others had stopped dancing and were watching them. It was a little embarrassing. Don't worry about them. It's just you and me right now. His reply made her blush. They began to dance. While it was a dance, it also looked like a fight between benders. There were quite a few spins, kicks, flips, and twists in the dance. The audience watched in stunned amazement as they danced. When they stopped, they clapped and cheered. Outside of the cave, the headmaster of the school arrived with guards. He heard the noise coming from inside the cave. "It is a dancing party," he said. "You did the right thing by telling me, Hyde." "Anytime, Headmaster Sir," Hyde replied with a salute. In the cave, the dancing was going strong. "This is incredible," the chubby student said as he danced. "It's like my inhibitions just disappear." Then he and the rest of the students saw the headmaster and the guards. "Okay, they're back again." The music stopped. "He's the one we want. The boy with the headband," shouted the headmaster as he pointed at Aang. The guards charged forward, intent on grabbing him. "Oh!" yelped Aang before he ran into the crowd. The music started up again, faster. The guards plunged into the crowd of students. One of them reached for what he thought was Aang. "Gotcha," he said, grabbing the student's arm. "Looking for me?" the student asked, turning around. He had taken the school belt and wore it as a headband to fool him. The guard got confused and looked back at the headmaster. "That's not the one," the headmaster told him. "He's here somewhere. Don't let him leave the cave." The guards kept trying to find him, but they kept grabbing students who put on the headbands. Even the headmaster tried to find him. In the end, both he and the guards were surrounded by the students, all wearing headbands. In the back, Team Avatar was leaving. Aang was the last to leave. Seeing a student wink at him, he returned it with a salute. He escaped through the back entrance and closed it with earthbending, missing the student's stunned expression. The headmaster and the guards had been trapped in the middle. "Stop that!" he ordered one of the guards as he started dancing to the music. "Stop that!" he ordered another guard as she tapped her foot to the beat. "Oh, relax. Even guards need to enjoy themselves," Naruto's voice said. The music died as everyone stared at who was standing at the cave entrance. "But more importantly, what are you doing here?" the Paragon asked the headmaster. Hyde informed me that there was a dancing party that students at the school were attending," he promptly answered. "As you know, Lord Naruto, something like this is illegal. You've never really read the rules about the education system, have you?" the blonde asked him, making the Sand siblings smirk in unison. "Excuse me? A dancing party is illegal." "That is true." The faces of the students fell when they heard those words. "But only on school grounds. And as far as I can tell, this is not school grounds. So, you're out of line." The headmaster tried to come up with a reply but could only splutter. "Just leave and take your snitch with you." He pointed to Hyde. The headmaster scowled at him and marched out of the cave, the disappointed guards who started to enjoy the music and Hyde following him. Turning his gaze back onto the students, he saw that they were all looking at him. "What? Are you going to tell us to go home now?" a student asked him. "Are you kidding? I just pulled your rear ends out of the fire. You kids go play and dance your hearts out. That's an order," he told them all. "Yes, sir," the students replied, giving him a salute with mock formality. Naruto and the Sand siblings just stayed in the back and played crowd control for the rest of the party. It was a good way to spend the night, watching kids have fun. Appa flew out of the back of the cave and into the night. "We're safe," Katara announced, looking away from the edge. "Hold on," Sokka said as he looked over the edge. "What?" Aang asked him. "I just saw Naruto and the Sand siblings go into the cave." We might want to go a little faster, the tribesman announced. Appa had seemed to have heard him because he picked up the pace. Way to go, Dancy Pants, Toph congratulated Aang. I think you really did help those kids, you taught them to be free. I don't know. It was just a dance party, that's all. Well, that was some dance party, Aang, Katara told him, kissing him on the cheek and making him blush. But when he saw one of them not looking happy, the blush faded. Hey, Sokka, what's the matter? He asked as he saw the tribesman still looking over the side of the saddle. We got lucky back there, Sokka stated. Don't worry, Sokka. Naruto should be able to see what we're trying to do if we talk to him, the air nomad assured him. He was sure of it. Don't get your hopes up. Otherwise, you might be getting a big disappointment, he replied as they flew through the night. Zuko walked down the street in the harbor. Night had fallen and the darkness cast shadows everywhere, making it look like the place you wouldn't go visit after dark. Not without a purpose. He arrived at the spot, lowered the hood of his heavy robe and waited. Soon, he heard a heavy foot and the clank of metal. Turning around, he saw the man he was looking for. You sure you weren't followed? He asked the man, who stayed silent. I've heard about you. They say you're good at what you do and even better at keeping secrets. The Avatar is alive. I want you to find him and end him. The assassin didn't say anything, he didn't have to. His metal leg, metal arm, and his tattoo of a red eye said enough. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.